Hello, class. How are you? It is Dr. Pam Turner, and I am so glad you're joining me today. This is our human behavior class. This is our Thursday morning class. And we're looking at the psychological aspects of young and middle adulthood. As we go through this chapter, chapter 11, we'll come across a lot of the theorists. And definitely for those of you that plan on taking the licensure test anytime soon, those are important things to remember regarding the test is also working with normal humans. So, knowing these theorists and who said what is just really important. So, let's start off today. Okay. So, when it comes to theorists, everyone has a different opinion, right? So, our major theorists are who we discover, who we talk about. But everyone has a theory, right, of how humans develop, of how we got here, all of those things. So the first thing we're going to look at, of course, is Eriksson. Eriksson is my psychosocial guy. So Eriksson actually was a follower of Freud. So a lot of his beliefs about how we develop were actually a bit unconscious. But he also looked about socializing. Not only how we grew and developed at the unconscious level, but also then how it affected us in our social environment. So let me just show you kind of what Ericsson's stages look like. Of course, we're talking about the young adulthood, young adulthood. So we're going to start off with the intimacy stage, right? When it comes to Erickson, intimacy. However, if we go back and do a recap on all of his stages, right, we'll find that he thought that 18, so 18 months birth to 18 months, you were going through trust versus mistrust. And the goal, of course, is that you would gain hope. So babies cry and cry and cry, and no one ever comes. Then they grow up thinking the world is not a good place. 18 months to 3 years, right? Autonomy versus shame and doubt. Babies develop their will, right? Those terrible twos, and they want to do what they want to do, mom. Initiative versus guilt, that's 3 to 5. Kids develop their purpose. And an example of that is, that age, you're very curious and they ask you lots and lots of things. And many times you're like, just because. Right. So they take the initiative, and many times it doesn't work out well and they end up feeling guilty. The one we're looking at prior to ours is intimate industry versus inferiority. So that is when you start elementary school, right? You're trying to figure out what you're good at, and so whether you were the fastest runner in class, or whether you were the teacher's pet or the best ballet person, whatever. That's why we put kids in lots of different after school activities, extracurricular activities to help them really find out what they're good at. So industry, if you think about what your town is known for, that's what you're competent in your industry. And then now we're starting our early adolescence. I'm sorry, now we're starting our early adulthood. So in these stages, according to Erickson, this is 21 through 39. And what Erickson said is, if you haven't gone through the prior stages, for example, if you haven't gone through your purpose, the elementary school level, you're doing your competency, what you're good at, and your 13 through 21, your identity, right? That's knowing who you are and who you are attracted to, right? That's your sexual identity as well as your identity. You get fidelity, that's being true to yourself. So then you will struggle with those stages if you don't get fidelity right. Okay, you can't do intimacy, you can't do intimacy because you didn't figure out who you were or who you were attracted to earlier in life. So let's say that you did, right, according to Erickson. So now you're in intimacy versus isolation. Erickson said at some point during this time you should have been in love. Right, some point, you pick somebody, somebodies, but you should have had developed a one serious attachment. Okay, and other than your mom and dad, right, some kind of other intimate relationship. He'll go on later to talk about stagnation versus generativity. Of course, that's the age that I'm in. Okay, that's 40 to 50, 40 to 65, and then 65 and older, that's on your deathbed, and that's integrity versus despair. And I always say, I wish he had taught us like wisdom before that, but I guess you got to live some years to get the wisdom. Okay, so let's go back to our chapter then. Okay, again, so that's his theory of intimacy versus isolation, and we went over those. Okay. I talked about generativity versus stagnation. Okay. Peck is a theorist also. He is not a biggie for the licensure test. He is not one that you would see, but for the students in my class, it's something you might want to look at as well. So Peck looked at, and his stages were one, socializing versus sexualizing in human relations. Okay, he said that we need to spend more time being friends, being close with men and women, other than having looking for a sexual relationship. That we should value wisdom. Okay, so valuing wisdom over valuing physical powers. That as we get older, so as we're younger, especially, and we're 20 and cute, and wear a size zero, right? As we get older, that zero gets harder and harder to fit in. You're rocking, like a two in front of the zero now. But what he says, as we get older, we really should learn to value wisdom as opposed to the physical powers. Okay, emotional reflection versus emotional instability. I'm sorry, impoverishment. Okay, as we are young, we really sometimes don't have as much control as our emotions as we should. Right, we talk about emotional IQ, my EQ. Okay, so as I get older, I really should be able to have more flexibility in my emotions and not fall apart when things happen, right? As we get older in life, we begin to realize that people around us begin to die, right? We've lost some things, some jobs, some marriages. So at this point, we should be able to handle it better than we did when we were in our 20s. Okay, and mental flexibility versus mental rigidity. For my middle age, many people have completed their formal education and are sufficiently trained for their job or their career, or they've have something is going on, right? They sometimes they stop seeking new information. Right, they just stop. So that would say, according to Eriksson, he would say, that's they're getting to their stagnation. Like they finish learning, they're not going to do anything. And he says that we should continue to grow and learn. We should be lifetime learners. Okay. And that's important to make sure that we do that. So while it may not be textbooks that you had to learn formally, and we should always continue to learn and grow because definitely things change. Things are not the same way than they were when they were in their 20s. And I can definitely speak to that, right? Levinson, of course, he is my man guy. Levinson looked at the development of men. Okay, so his name was Daniel Levinson, and he and his colleagues studied 40 men ages 35 to 45, including everyone, right? All different kinds of professions. What he found was that he looked at the concepts of life structure. He defined that as underlying patterns or design in a person's life at a given time. So, according to Levinson, he said life takes a number of changes, of passages, right? We have to go through these rites of passage, you might want to call it. So, passage from the freedom to childhood to entering school, from school to work world, from not dating to dating, from dating to breaking up, or marrying from, marrying up. Breaking up or marrying, from marrying to divorce, and so on. Okay, so he said those were just life cycles that we go through. So pre-adulthood up until age 22, that's a formative time, right? You're just forming kind of who you are. Early adolescence, 75 to 45. I'm sorry, early adulthood. I forgot that. Middle adulthood, and of course that late adulthood. This textbook talks about being 60 or beyond. In new research, we're looking at that being like 70 and beyond, right? Okay, so we call that the old. So again, looking at some of these, what happens. So, and pre-adulthood, this is what should happen here. Middle adulthood and late adulthood. And again, he said these are just normal transactions in life. That's part of growing up. And again, he's looking at only at men. Okay. What he did say is if I have difficulty any of the transitions, it shouldn't be difficult. You shouldn't be surprised I have difficult with the other ones. So sometimes we'll call that um, midlife crisis, especially for men. They go out and they get a sports car and dump their wife and pick up a 20-year-old chickie. I don't know that, but maybe. So, but that's called kind of sometimes that midlife crisis. So Levinson said that they probably had crisis the whole time, not just during that stage, and that was part of men's growth. Okay. Maslow is next, of course. We know his hierarchy of needs. Maslow has always been known as our hierarchy of needs. However, we now call him motivational theory, always motivated to get to the top. So if you talk about his theory, the bottom, right, that's where my basic needs are going to be met. Those are my D's, my deficits. And at the top, those are my beings. Right. So what he said is very few people actually get to self-actualization. And even if we get there, we don't stay. Maslow was considered a humanistic, and at the time, that was very rare. He suggested we look at people first, and he was the first theorist that actually ever did that. The other people said, "What do you mean, look at the people first?" So that was he was very controversial at the time when he came out. Okay, trying to get me out of your way here. Okay, so what he said is we're all trying to get to the top. The book goes to self actualization, but you might see in some texts there's actually another level. It's called self transcendence. Self transcendence. Wow, with braces, that really is hard to get out. Okay, so what he said though is our bottom ones, right? Those are our D needs, our deficits, things that we have to have. The motivation decreases as needs are met. Okay, so my physiological need, those are my basics, right? Food, shelter, clothing, things like that. Safety in my neighborhood, safety in my family, secure in my job, right? Things like that are safety. And then love and belonging, that's where I get to that stage of I need to be part of something. And then esteem. So I always think of those stages, especially when we're looking at moms, and I get this a lot, from teachers. And moms will say, "Well, those parents don't care. They don't even come to the school conference. They don't care." And I've always used Maslow hierarchy of needs and the importance of telling teachers that if mom is at the bottom and she's really trying to take care of her kids, it's not that she doesn't care, it's just that she can't care. And I experienced being a single mom, and I had not planned on being a single mom. That was not my goal. My husband died, and I've got three kids to raise. And for the first time in my life, I was actually able to really feel Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I had been the mom there that was the cheerleading mom and the band mom, and had shown up at all the field trips and made these homemade Halloween costumes, and did all of these things. Suddenly I'm a single mom, and that self actualization, that self esteem was not the priority. I was worried about making sure my kids had a house to live in, right? Making sure that they were safe, making sure they felt loved. And the financial piece, again, I'm going to a single mom. So I had to work a lot harder, a lot more hours to make sure that we had the basic needs. So then, my self actualization was not even an option. So again, when it comes to parents and teachers who say parents can't, anyone who says, why don't those parents show up? Why don't those parents do this? The role we're going to take as mental health providers is they would if they could. Parents give the very best they have to their children, right? They always want more for their children than they had. So don't think that parents don't try. And of course, we do have a handful of parents who really have other mental health or substance abuse issues going on. But as a normal, healthy parents, they really, really do try to give the kids whatever the best they can, the very best they can. Okay, let's go back then. Okay, so again, that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Your physiological, your food, water, oxygen, rest, things that your body physically needs to survive. Okay, safety again, not knowing if I'm going to have a place to live when we come home, not knowing if we're going to be evicted, we're behind on the rent, and even now with COVID, right? We've stopped some of those rent moratoriums. Things have changed. So the belongingness and love, that's a one of the main reasons that we see kids who are involved in gangs. And again, it's not that mom and dad don't love them. It's not that mom and dad don't want to be there. But many times, mom and dad are working. They're trying to make sure you have a place to sleep. They're trying to make sure you have breakfast tomorrow. And especially if it's a single mom, right? She's doing her very best to provide the basic needs so that love and belongingness is easily found in gang activity, right? We all want to fit in. We all want to belong somewhere. And if I'm the only one at home because mom's working and, the dudes down the street say, hey, come hang with us. And I see they're sometimes making really good money. It's very, very tempting. And one of the reasons that I'm really going to do some of that gang involvement where I might not have if I had a different socioeconomic status. Okay. Again, emotional and social intelligence. We've always talked about our IQ, which is our intellectual intelligence, right? How smart we are or how smart we're not. An average IQ is 100 with the standard deviation of 9. So that between 91 and 109 is where you get your standard IQ, your intelligence. Things below 70 put us in the learning, the cognitive difficulties population, and anything over 120 puts us in a gifted population. I think 143, 144 is Mensa, and those are the really, really smart people in the world. Okay, so EQ again is refers to ability to recognize and deal with your own feelings as well as the feelings of others. Okay, so he just developed an EQ test. He looked at more than 50 corporations, and what he looked at was self awareness, awareness of your self esteem, emotional self awareness, and self confidence, self management, right? Your trustworthiness, your achievements, your drive, your initiative, your social awareness, empathy, organizational awareness, service orientation, and the relationship management, right? Learning how that interpersonal relationship works with the people that you work with. Okay. So then, what he found was that EQ is not easy to measure. Some tests have been used to develop it. Okay, so I'm sorry, social intelligence, right? There are many emotions, and how do we rate someone who can't handle fear, but not guilt? So there is an EQ test out there. However, we haven't found one that to be that valid or reliable. So then our SI is our social intelligence. That's how we look for the people around us and how we behave for the people around us. Are we able to exhibit empathy when someone is going through something tough? Um, we look at our self presentation, social facilitation, things like that. Okay, and again, some tests have been developed to measure SI, like IQ tests. SI tests are usually based on 100, 100 being the average, so 100 being the mean, right? And then, of course, the IQ, the standard deviation between 85 and 115 scores are 140 to be very high. Okay, so let's look at your social intelligence. And of course, that's really important as you're working your way through society, knowing what to say, knowing how to act, knowing what fork to use, knowing to make eye contact. All of those things are how we behave in society and are definitely really important. So, looking at a social IQ test would be something you might want to look at. Okay. We've talked before about communication style, right? So communication style is not just what's coming out of my mouth. So communication style is what my body is saying, as well as what my mouth is saying and my face. Like, what are they all saying? And the goal, of course, is to be congruent. So what is coming out of my mouth should match my body language, and that affect, my facial, should all match. If I say, yeah, I'm having a good day, or I really enjoy my job, all those things should really match up. If I'm saying, yeah, I like that job, or women say, "It's fine," right? My body language is not matching up with my mouth is saying. And in general, I've said before, if those are very incongruent, you're always going to believe the body, right? Shakira said, "The hips don't lie." I know I'm a great singer, but really, what she said is, and in general, what we know is we're going to believe the body. The mouth can lie a lot easier than my body can. Okay, so those are looking at my nonverbal cues. Those are important in working in sessions with clients, but those are important just in real life as well, right? At times, nonverbal cues such as sweating, stammering, blushing, or frowning convey information that we're trying to hide. Right? I didn't mean to be embarrassed. I didn't mean for, to get all flushed. But my body tricked me, right? My body said, "Oh, wait a minute, Pam, this is, embarrassing." So remember, I'm going to read all of those nonverbal cues when I'm working with somebody. There are lots of reasons for those nonverbal cues, right? Nonverbal cues may repeat what is said verbally. A husband says he's looking forward to becoming a father and repeats this with a glow on his face, like, "I'm going to have a baby," right? Nonverbal messages may substitute for verbal cues. If a close friend has failed an important exam, you can get a good idea of their look on their face, right? How was it? Was it okay? And they don't have to say anything, Nonverbal messages may also accent verbal messages, right? If someone you're dating and he and she is angry with you or something you did, the depth of feeling may be emphasized by pounding of a fist or pointing of the finger, right? Silence is also a nonverbal exercise, right? If I'm not speaking to you, if I'm angry with you, and there are lots of families that have used that when we just don't speak, that is definitely a nonverbal cue of what's going on. Okay. Nonverbal cues may serve to regulate verbal behavior. Okay, so looking away from someone who is talking to you is a way of sending a message that you aren't interested. I used to say to my husband, you know, just pretend to look at me when I'm talking. Pretend to listen, right? Because we feel like the TV is on, that football season or basketball season or whatever season is going on, that we feel like that our partner sometimes isn't listening to us. So those nonverbal cues of putting down the book, putting down the phone, taking time to make eye contact. All of those things are really important when it comes to the nonverbal cues. Okay. So we always want to make sure that we're able to understand those nonverbal cues. Your posture, okay? So one of the things that we know, if we've watched people who are interested in movie or conversation, we'll see them like lean in. Like, wow, that's exciting, right? I want to hear more about that. I want to know more about that. But watching the degree of tenseness has been a way of detecting status differences. That is your status, right? Your socioeconomic class. In interactions between higher educated people and lower status people, the higher status people are usually more relaxed, and the lower status people are usually more rigid and tense. For example, note the positions that are usually assumed when a faculty member and students are conversing in the faculty member's office. Right? Teachers and public speakers often watch the posture of listeners to see how the presentation is going. Okay. The audience slumping in their chair and they're about to fall asleep. That gives me an idea that my presentation is getting boring. Right? So that verbal messages tell me a whole lot. And actually, that's why I ask you when I'm doing any online classes that you keep your cameras open. Okay, because I can read your body. I can tell that you don't understand. I can tell that, Dr. Pam, you've gone over this enough times. Please don't keep talking. So all of those things I pick up in your verbal cues. And a lot of times people will have questions. I'm sorry, your nonverbal cues. And a lot of times people have questions. I can see by their face they really don't understand the content, but oftentimes they're embarrassed to ask it. But if I can see it on your face, then I'm getting that you're not getting it. I'm going to make sure that I reiterate or go over again what we just went over. Okay, and again, my body orientation. Okay, so the orientation, which the face towards someone or away from someone with our head, body, and feet. The phrase "turning your back on someone" could concisely summarize the message that you've just turned away. Right? If they're talking to you and you kind of walk away, that's telling you a lot. Like, oh, wait a minute here. Okay. Gestures. We know some finger gestures that maybe are not appropriate, right? Okay, so I don't need to explain those, but how we can definitely read by gestures. But a couple of other things, right? When I do a lot I do a lot of speaking, and what's funny is I'll be on the podium behind the person who's speaking, and I can see their leg tap. And whether it's a student who's nervous or another presenter who's nervous, they may come across as fine, but behind them, I see that leg tapping. Like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So their anxiety really is showing, and whether they're not meaning for it to. Okay. Um, you know, you rub your eyes or the parts of your body, you tap a pencil. All of those things are things that are gestures that I can read, right? If we say, "Mm, mm, 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 mm," right? I don't have to say anything. You know exactly what I mean. And this famous one, right? Okay, so talk to the hand. So I don't think we use that anymore, but all of those gestures definitely were things that we have learned. Okay, things that we use in society as part of our communication style. Okay, touching. Most research talks about the importance of touch. We know from the beginning with babies, right? You've seen the commercials, and especially the premature babies, the importance of laying them skin to skin. And if you've had a baby, many times the first thing the doctor does is puts the baby on your skin. Skin to skin contact is so important. It helps us grow and thrive, and be good. It helps us. That physical touch helps us emotionally. Okay. The research that looks at babies in orphanages, right, who were fed and clothed but didn't receive that touch, ended up being physically in stature having some difficulties, as well as mentally having some difficulties as well. Okay. So, another research says that eczema, allergies, and certain other medical problems are in part caused by a person's lack of physical contact with a parent during infancy. I know. Isn't that weird? Physical stimulation of children facilitates their intellectual, social, and emotional well being, as well as their physical development. Adults also need physical touch. Okay, so people need to know that they are loved, recognized, or appreciated. Touching them through holding their hands, right? Hugging them, patting them on the shoulder. All of those things are things that humans need. And now we've lived in a society where we've taught to be careful when we do that, right? Because of um, the all the implications that sometimes comes with touch. And I'll tell you, I went to school in South Florida, and definitely I was taught during school, you don't touch clients. You don't touch clients. You don't touch clients. You don't touch clients. Drilled in my head, and then I moved to a state in the South, right? And I moved here, and everyone's touching everybody. And at the end of the session, social workers and client and counselors are hugging their clients, and I'm like, whoa, this goes against everything I've ever known to believe. And I was practicing for like 25 years, right? 30, yeah, 25 years before I'd moved here. So like, whoa, 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 what's going on here? Despite norms, local norms or cultures, that's different areas, but most of us have been taught by the code of ethics to really be careful about our touching, making sure that we don't um, hurt a client, make sure we don't intentionally, touch someone that perhaps read it a different way. That's our responsibility. Okay, so holding hands, hugging, things like that. To touching someone is, in fact, an excellent way of conveying messages, depending on the context, right? If I touch my kid on the bottom, no, we know what that means, right? A hug at a funeral will connotate caring, while a hug by someone connotates "it's good to see you." Hug between a parent and child says "I love you." A hug on a date, maybe some sexual feelings, right? So all of these things can mean something, but touch is crucial for the survival and development of children, and touch is just as crucial for adults, assuming that they are worthwhile and loved. Okay. Our clothing, right? That's another way of giving off some communication styles. I'll give you an example of what it looks like, especially in a practice. I've worked with many police officers many times, and because they're human too, right? Going through divorce, some court order things, they're still human too. And coming to a group session in your police uniform is definitely setting a message, isn't it? Okay, whether it's like, I'm more important than you because I wear police uniform, or maybe this is not important because I didn't get off in time, work in time to change clothes. Okay, but several times I've had to have policemen to ask them to not come in uniform, because that really intimidates a lot of people in the group setting, and that's not okay. That's really not okay. Okay. So clothes affect our self image. Clothes define kind of who we are and what we do. There's sometimes also, it's easier to misread someone's character based on their clothes. Right. So, especially with gender nonconforming, people who dress as they like as opposed to the gender that they were assigned. Okay. And the same thing. So, if I'm wearing a dress and heels and look like I'm coming from work, there's a different kind of respect than I get when I'm wearing jeans and a t shirt. Okay. So definitely our clothing matters. And, we still do that initial judgment many times, by the way we look. Unfair or fair, just kind of that's a very human thing that we all do. Okay. So then when it comes to cultural diversity and looking at other people. So just because they dress a different fashion or different style, be sure that you examine culturally what that means to your client. Not just, oh my gosh, they don't dress like Americans. That's not what we're wanting to know. We're wanting that to find out more about their culture and knowing about what that dress means and what role that plays. Okay, our personal zone. So this research talks about our personal zone and realizing sometimes it is a cultural thing, sometimes it is a family thing, how you grew up, and sometimes it's just an own personal bias of how people can get into your space, right? So a lot of our Hispanic and Latino countries or clients really have a very close space. They can be very close to each other. They can sometimes be very close to other people that sometimes lovey touchy. And of course, these are overall generalists about people the Latino and Hispanic populations. Not We're not saying everyone like that. That is so not true. However, some people may have a very big personal space. I don't want you in my space. Okay. The far range of a person's zone for an adult, it's about 2.5 to 4 feet. That's how far we need to be and before we feel comfortable talking to someone. And especially with COVID, our zone has grown a lot bigger, right? And I have a lot of friends in private practice or have gone back to work. And I always say that um, I'm very uncomfortable, and I've been vaccinated, but I'm very uncomfortable someone being in my space. That's since COVID. And in my space, I mean, even in my tiny office, I feel you're invading my space. Don't breathe on me. Don't do any of those things. So our personal space has definitely changed, right? It was like 6 feet away, things like that. But knowing that that's where you and you and the person you're communicating feel comfortable. Now, if you're talking to a spouse or a loved one, right, you're probably like right here, right? You're really close to each other. When I'm talking to my children, we're talking while we're hugging, right? Like I'm whispering in their ear while we're hugging, because the zone between my loved ones, my children, is very different than the zone between my family members, right? So my social zone usually is about 4 feet to 12 feet, depending on again where we are. And that's socially how close I'm gonna let people get to me. The 7 to 12 range is the distance for most impersonal and formal situations. Okay, when we're working at our cubicle, right, our little desk, our cubicles are usually about that way, so we can make sure that we have some privacy. Let's see here. If we were to pull our chair around the boss's desk in order to sit closer, a different kind of relationship would be signaled, right? So I don't know if you can see my office. So I don't have a very typical office. I am little. I took the desk out and kind of have some seating. Just if I can get that all the way around. Mm, there we go. There we go. Okay. So you'll see that my chair really is not near my desk. So prior to COVID, I really did not have that table there. There's a table right there if you can see. Probably not. But there's a table there. So that table is putting distance between me and my client. Before it really was, the chair was right there. And as we were registering, you could see my screen. And it really was not a big deal. But certainly as things have changed with COVID, we've all become more aware of that social distancing. The chair is over there. Okay. And if you get close to me, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. And the look on my face is going to make you think there's something wrong with you, perhaps, because I'm definitely going to be uncomfortable. Okay. And the public zone, of course, that's 12 feet. That's when teachers are teaching, we're across the room, the pastors at the pulpit, all of those things, that's going to be a public zone. Okay. Facial expressions, we kind of talked about those when we talked about body gestures, right? Sadness, all those good things. My physical appearance. Like, what? How does that do with what I'm trying to convey? Now on Friday night when you're going out and your shirt's like stopped here and you're wearing the good push-up bra and the little bitty tiny skirt, what you're trying to convey, right? So physical image in general, it's common to hear people say that their inner beauty only really counts. However, research shows that outer beauty, physical attractiveness, plays an influential role in a broad range of interpersonal interactions. Male college professors tend to give higher grades to females who are physically attractive, more than those who are less attractive. In one study, attractive females were more effective in modifying the attitude of male students on a national issue. Um, Hold on, I'll say that again. So, um, in one study, attractive females were more effective in modifying the attitudes of male students on national issues than were less attractive females. Attractive persons, regardless of sex, are rated at high credibility, which greatly increases their ultimate persuasiveness, right? So that's kind of the halo effect. When I'm looking at someone who is very charming, very attractive, I'm more willing to follow them and believe what they say. There's something about them that's charismatic. Physically attractive people have been found to outstrip less attractive people in a wide range of socially desired evaluations, including personality, popularity success, sociability, persuasiveness, sexuality, and often happiness. For example, attractive women are more apt to be helped and less likely to be the objection of aggressive non-sexual behavior. So, attractive women are less likely to get their purse stolen. Makes sense, right? Hmm. Just because of my looks? Yeah, that's a lot strange. Based on research, though, based on research. Less attractive people are at a disadvantage from early childhood on. Teachers, for example, interact less positively with unattractive children. Physical attraction is a crucial factor in determining who we decide who will date, who will marry. Okay, for practically, everyone prefers the more attractive, regardless of his or her own attractiveness, or regardless of being rejected. Right? That we still like to hang out. We still enjoy being with attractive people. Okay. It goes on to say the shape of one's body suggests certain stereotypes also. People who are overweight are judged to be older, more old-fashioned, look less physically, less strong physically, more talkative, and less good looking. People who are muscular are rated as being stronger, better looking, younger, more adventurous, more self-reliant, and more mature in behavior. Hmm. Okay, that's why working out. Just thinking maybe that's what I should get back to. People with a thin physique are rated as younger, more suspicious of others, more tense and nervous, less masculine, more pessimistic, right? Being tall is an advantage, especially in the business world for men, not necessarily for women. So, taller men definitely carry some stature. That is not the same for women, unfortunately, especially when I'm a taller woman and I'm like 5'9". I like to wear heels. Yeah, making those big old tall women some days. Okay. So again, just kind of looking at how I look changes the tone or changes the conversation. Of course, the environment, right? Where I'm at, what I say, how I dress. If you see my office is very subtle lighting. So yes, I work on a school campus, but however, I many of my students come in, and like any other students, have things they want to talk about or problems they want to talk about. So hopefully the ambiance really encourages a way conversation. That it's not a sterile, cold office. It really is a place that you can feel warm and be safe. Hopefully, at least. Okay. Glasser is one of my theorists. He talked about choice. Glasser talked about choice theory. What he said is we are all humans and we're all trying to meet five basic needs. Let me show that to you. Mm, mm, mm. Let me just do Glasser. Oh, there we go. There we got it. There we go. Okay. So Glasser said we had five basic needs that we're always trying to get met. And if we could get those needs met, and the goal is getting those needs met, so we're trying to get them met in like a healthier way. Come on, open up for me. There we go. Okay, so he said love and belonging, power, fun, survival, and freedom. He said those are genetically our five basic needs that we need to survive in society. And we're always trying to get those needs filled. So Glasser is again, he's called a choice therapy guy. So what he said is people have choices in life and to make their own free and make their own choices. However, that there is some responsibility that come with those choices. Okay, and there's a great vignette that talks about that. Okay, and those are his five choices, his five basic needs he said that you need. Okay, I'm not going to stop discuss this one. Again, there are lots and lots of theories, so I truly try not to go through all of them. I mean, there's some of them we just can't get to. Okay, this next part of the chapter is going to talk about chemical dependency and substance abuse. I'm going to stop right there, and we'll come back next week and we'll talk about chemical dependency and substance abuse. Okay, it's been a pleasure, guys. I hope you got something out of this lecture today, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Dr. Pam, bye.